welcome back to Sunrise. It's now time for your morning checkup, and today we're having a conversation that really deserves more attention, this issue. Men's mental health. Well, the stats are sobering. Men account for over 80% of suicides in Jamaica, but why is that, and what can be done? Here to help us break the silence and get real about this issue, we have Associate Clinical Psychologist Veral Billet. Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, thanks for having me.
All right, first of all, let's talk about mental health from a gendered perspective. Now, from a gendered perspective, men and women, of course, we have different triggers, we have different, we process the world differently. And as a result, and the world processes us differently.
Definitely.
How does that now feed into good or bad mental health habits?
Well, it helps to create spaces. What license do we have to freely express ourselves or not express ourselves?
Right.
So we have a situation where women are more communicative. They talk to each other. No matter what they're going through, they have somebody that they can talk to. Men feel as if they don't have anybody because of the perception of not wanting to be weak or seen as weak. And nobody don't want to jelly back man. Right? So how do we now talk about freely men expressing themselves and be comfortable doing so? It's going to be a challenge.
But then, all right, it's something that we're aware of, but is it something that we have seen an evolution in? Because some of the differences are, one might say evolutionary. Some would say it's genetic because some of it is hormonal in the way that there's a biological element to it. It's not just socialization, which is changeable over time.
Right. But at the same time, as humans, we all have this need to connect.
Yes.
And we can connect in different ways. So even though it is said that men are not the most communicative, we still express ourselves, but it's not understood. We tend to keep things on the inside. And we tend to be more action-oriented. Versus women, they can be action-oriented too, but they're more talkative. Which is not a bad thing, ladies.
No,
right?
Absolutely.
So, from a genetic standpoint or an evolutionary standpoint, men are seen as protectors and providers, but at the same time, there needs to be that balance. There needs to be that balance for us to all protect our mental health.
A part of mental health is, one factor influencing is the weight of social expectation.
Definitely.
How are those things evolving? How are those things changing? And how are men, do you think, managing the weight of social expectations on what we must be and how we must be and to whom we must be?
Those must statements, you see. It is quite challenging. I've seen where there are some changes. Men are a little bit more open these days, especially men of the younger generation, accessing mental health care, but it is still a challenge. I've often said that many a times when men come to see me, it's usually at the prompting of a doctor, a medical doctor, or a female partner, right? Or if it's a young boy, their parents. So there's usually somebody who will inspire them or drag them, if you will, to come and seek help. But we do have a few men who come on their own seeking help. Right? So there are some changes, but there's a lot more to do and ways to go.
You know, Veral, the challenge though is that men, generally speaking, have poor health-seeking behavior.
Definitely.
Generally speaking, we will see something. I go and watch it still. I don't know, and you know, you're on a rat now, and you go and watch it. And that is also how we treat our mental health. You know, issue there, but you go and watch it.
Definitely.
How can we, generally speaking, improve health-seeking behavior as men?
I think that just as how, for those of us who drive, we get to the mechanic, every 3 months or so or more.
For a service.
Right, for a service. And if you hear one sound or something is not working, you take it in. Treat your body the same way. Treat your mind the same way. Go in for checkups. Even your regular checkup every year, go to your dentist, try and find a therapist, a psychologist. And sometimes it doesn't have to even be that you go and go to a psychologist for umpteen sessions.
But
Sometimes it's just connecting with the right people, right? And being open. And we speak about vulnerability. I mean, not wanting to be vulnerable, but it's a double-edged sword. If we're not vulnerable, we're actually strengthening our weaknesses and preparing ourselves to crumble or explode. Because I do believe that when we keep things on the inside and we kind of isolate ourselves, whether in literally or figuratively, we become walking volcanoes as men.
Walking volcanoes. I think that's a profound statement because there are so many things going on below the surface that are rumbling and waiting
Just
to erupt.
One small thing, that's like one stone dropping into the volcano, that can cause an eruption.
Which points to the fact that there are so many times when you see men erupt, you see an emotional reaction, you see a lashing out, and you wonder, that is disproportional to the trigger that you saw. What could have caused that?
A number of things. Things coming from childhood come right up. They are left untreated. Persons dismiss them. Oh, that's a small thing. Oh, I never handled it that way. So you're good, man. Whenever need for seeing help, you're good. But we are all different beings. We all process things differently, even as men. And so what will affect you, what stresses me will not stress you, and vice versa. And so we have to treat ourselves and not treat ourselves as if we're somebody else.
I live with a future man. He's 5 years old, almost 6. How can we as men, especially men if we're raising boys, and how can the mothers who are raising boys, some without the assistance of a stable man in their life, how can we not perpetuate the faults of this generation? How can we ensure that the next generation, the future men, are better than we are?
Check yourself first. As an adult, you have a responsibility. If you want to do better for your young ones, check yourself first. If you're good, you can then teach the younger ones how to be good. You lay that foundation, you create that space for them. You also encourage them to express themselves without judgment, right? We teach regulation skills, how to tap into yourself, your body, and how to regulate your emotions. So if you're angry, you're angry. But what is that about? How do you express your anger healthily? Right? This whole notion of stop being angry needs to stop. We all get angry. Right?
And anger is a legitimate emotion.
It's a beautiful emotion.
Yes.
Right?
But what do you do with it?
It's how you express it that makes a difference.
Yes.
And what we need to understand, all those other emotions like sadness and guilt, if they're not given space, they turn into anger.
And if the anger is not given space, it probably turn into bitterness, which we were talking about just yesterday, I believe it was. So very important. Veral, always a pleasure to talk to you.
It's great being here.
Thank you very much. An important discussion, and a discussion that I hope you continue in your own spaces, at the barber shop, at the mechanic shop, at the bar, you know, amongst your brethren, and wherever. Continue the conversation. My guest has been Veral Billet. He's an associate clinical psychologist. If you or someone you know needs support, do not hesitate to reach out, okay? After the break, we're going to have a great conversation with Grammy Award-winning singer, songwriter, the one and only Gramps Morgan. He joins us in studio to talk music and, of course, heritage. We'll be right back.